Well, this is what I asked for. An opportunity to bluff catch versus an opponent who is way too loose and way too aggressive. There are tons of value hands he can have in this spot, but I'm not sure I can fold a hand this strong given how the action has gone.
What's up, people? Welcome back to 4Bet Blind. My name is Will. Thank you for joining me. As you may or may not be able to tell, I am in my car, sitting outside Portland Meadows right now, getting ready for another 1-2 session. I haven't been playing much recently, haven't been studying much recently, which is always a recipe for success. So hopefully only going to lose 1 to 2 buy-ins, depending on how bad I play. I guess we'll see. But yeah, let's hop in the games and see what's cooking.
Alright, back in the 1-2 streets here at Portland Meadows, buying in for $200. The first interesting hand starts with a limp from early position and the small blind raising to $12 before I look down at ace-king in the big blind. I 3-bet to $40 and it folds back to the small blind. He makes the call and we go heads up to a flop of queen 4 jack rainbow. My opponent checks to me and I actually check back here. In retrospect, at this stack to pot ratio with 2 overs and a gutter, I definitely should be all in here, but I check this time and we're off to a turn which brings the 6 of hearts. I guess my opponent sensed my weakness as now he leads out pretty quickly for $35. He definitely could have a queen or jack here, but I have pretty decent equity versus those types of hands and can also have the best hand at this point, so I'm not ready to call it quits yet. I make the call. The river is the 9 of diamonds and my opponent bets out $55, more than I have left in my stack. It seems like I've gotten myself into a bit of a pickle with ace high here. I obviously can never win versus any sort of value bets, but people are rarely value betting this type of river thinly, so we can start ruling out hands like Jack X and pocket tens. I'm also getting a great price, so I don't even need to have the best hand that often. As I'm running through this deliberation, I turn to my opponent and say,
I don't beat a lot.
As these words leave my mouth, I see a horrible sickness wash over his face, like he had just eaten a $14 hot dog from the WSOP cafe. Based off that reaction, I don't think there's much left to do but put in the chips. I call, and my opponent announces, "You're good," and mucks his cards. I don't even have to table mine. Let's go.
I am the smartest man alive!
Later on, I'm playing a 5-2 bomb pot where I'm dealt ace, king, 8, 10, 4 with hearts. The first flop comes 10, tray, ace, rainbow, and the second flop comes 4, king, 4, giving me a full house and top 2 pair. I'm first to act and I bet $15. A couple players in middle position call as well as the button, and we go 5 ways to a turn, which brings the 9 of diamonds and the 5 of diamonds. This time I elect to check, and a player in middle position bets $100. It folds to me, and it's decision time in this hand. I'm getting over 2 to 1 here on a call, and have pretty reasonable holdings on both boards. Further, if you look at the types of hands that have me beat on either board, so a hand like pocket kings, or pocket fives, or pocket tens, these hands don't have a lot of connectivity between the boards, so if he does have a hand like king-king, a lot of his king-king combos are losing to my ace-10, and vice versa, so if he has a hand like pocket tens, most of those combos are losing to my king-4, so for those reasons, I go ahead and make the call and pretty much decide I don't think I'm going to be able to fold this one unless some shit gets wonky. Everyone else folds and we go heads up to the river, which brings the 8 of diamonds and the jack of spades. I look down and see that I have the ace of diamonds, which completes the nut flush on top, so I decide to just go all in here just in case my opponent ever folds. I mean, you never know, there could be a strong breeze blowing throughout the poker room and his cards just get blown into the muck. Crazier things have happened. It doesn't happen this time. My opponent does click the call button, and we get some bad news when we see he has pocket 3s and pocket 5s. Not a great situation taking myself to Value Town, but happy to give my chips to a friendly player in the games. Spend them well, my friend. Next hand, there's an early position raise to $10, and I look down at 7-8 of spades in the cutoff. I make the call and the small blind calls as well. We go 3 ways to a flop that comes Jack 8-4 monotone. Both players check to me. Now is not the time for slow playing. I want to take my girl out to dinner later, and Crunchwrap Supremes are not cheap. So I go ahead and bet $20. The small blind folds and the original raiser makes the call. The turn looks like a Russell Westbrook jumper. The deuce of clubs. He checks again, and now it's time to pay for her McFlurry dessert, so this time I bet $50. My opponent doesn't think too long before making the call. The river is a beautiful deuce of hearts, total brick. Just kidding, the river brings the queen of spades, and my opponent's eyes light up like he just got a DM from Gal Gadot. This guy shoves his chips in the middle before the card even gets out, and not much to do here but just pass the cards in and say, nice hand, buddy.
Alright, mid-session update. I'm bored to fucking tears. I'm stuck like 300, in for 6, have like 280 or something in front of me. The flush one was not great. The bomb pot one didn't feel very good either. At least it's a nice night, kind of nice lighting out here.
Alright, I'm back from break, feeling a bit refreshed, happy to get some fresh air, and things seem to be turning around when I look down at pocket kings in early position. I raised to $10 before a player in the cutoff raises to $45. Comes back to me, and I'd seen this player raise a lot and play a lot of hands and just kind of spew off a fair amount in general. So I go ahead and make the call here, hoping he'll just go crazy post and knowing that we have a considerable range advantage and already a pretty short SPR. So heads up we go to a flop that comes 8-5-6 with a flush draw. Not a great flop, don't love it, so I go ahead and check, and he quickly checks back. The turn is the jack of spades. I take a moment here to debate on whether I'd like to bet or not. Obviously, we probably have the best hand, and obviously we benefit from protection, but I'm kind of still hoping this player is just going to blast off with a hand that doesn't need to bet. You can actually see me carve out some chips here out of my stack, which I think my opponent may have picked up on, because as soon as I check, he quickly checks right back. The river is a bit ugly, it's the 7 of clubs, so multiple 2-pair combos available now, multiple straights available, the front door flush as well. Not a river I feel very comfortable betting, so I go ahead and check it for a third time. And now that the board has gone to complete hell, my opponent finally obliges me and bets $100, a small overbet. Well, this is what I asked for. An opportunity to bluff catch versus an opponent who is way too loose and way too aggressive. There are tons of value hands he can have in this spot, but I'm not sure I can fold a hand this strong given how the action has gone. Ultimately, I think my hand is good just enough to be profitable here, so I go ahead and make the call. My opponent takes his time before sheepishly turning over the king 4 of spades for a rivered straight. Definitely some things I could have done differently, like 4-betting pre or betting the turn, but shout out to my opponent for taking a very interesting line with king 4. That hand didn't go very well, but it seems like the universe wants to give me another shot at it, as I'm dealt pocket kings in the very next orbit. There's an early position limp, and I go ahead and raise to $15 from early position. The cutoff calls, the big blind calls, and the early position limper calls, and we go 4 ways to a flop, which comes queen jack 7 with 2 spades. The big blind checks, and the early position limper leads out for $35. This bet into 4 players is very strong, like Alex Jones with his shirt off type strength. Still, he could just have something like queen 10 or king queen or even ace queen, and so I'm kind of incentivized to raise here, though I don't want to go too large with 2 additional players behind me, so I just go ahead and raise it up to 80. The cutoff folds before it gets back to the big blind, who starts thinking things over. He carves out a stack of chips and actually goes for the cold call here of the 80. Back to the early position player, who doesn't take too much time before ripping in his remaining chips, which is about 200 more. Kind of a rough spot with kings here, but it's hard to see one pair being the best hand. When it goes raise and call and this guy 3-bets over the top, it's just so nutted. That combined with the fact that the small blind blocks a lot of the draws, like when he cold calls, he can never have 2-pair, he can never have sets. He basically just has spades or 9-10 or king 10 or something of that variety. So those hands are much less available to the early position player who just went all in. So with all of that in mind, I decide to just go ahead and lay it down here. In this hand, I'm dealt ace king in early position. There's been lots of wonky pre-flop play at this table, so I decided to just go ahead and limp this time. The dude who 3-bet King 4 raises up to $20 before the small blind raises it to $60. This is what we train for. I go ahead and take my massive $225 chip stack and send it into the middle, knowing I'll get called by worse, knowing I get heaps of folds. It's a dream spot. The hijack folds before it's back to the small blind, who takes a moment to deliberate things over. He asks how much it is. It looks like he's pondering the Socratic method and deep philosophical questions before making the call, and we go to a run out. The board runs out Jack, 4-7, 10 of hearts, deuce of hearts. I flip over my ace king, and my opponent shows pocket jacks. Ace high unfortunately does not beat top set, so he wins this one. Nice hand, sir. Last interesting hand of the session, there's a button straddle to $5, a blind raise to $10 in the small blind, a blind raise to $20 in the big blind, and a limp from middle position. Yes, blind raises and a limp. This is what happened. I look down at pocket tens in the low jack, and with this much dead money in there, there's really only one choice. I go ahead and rip it in for $213 effective. It folds all the way back to the early position limper who goes into the tank. He's taking quite a bit of time to call here, and honestly I'm rooting for a call at this point considering the types of hands people are limping with. And eventually he does decide on the call, and we go to a run out. The flop comes Jack Deuce 3 Rainbow, the turn is the 5 of spades, and the river is not great, it is the King of Hearts. I go ahead and flip my hand over before I'm delivered the bad news my opponent has King Queen offsuit. Nice hand, sir, well played. Losing 5 buy-ins in under 4 hours is about as much punishment as I'd like to put myself through, so after this hand I get up and take off.
Alright, so that concludes one of the more brutal sessions in recent memory. Played about 6 hours, lost 1,000, so 5 buy-ins roughly. Few hands where it's like, you probably could have played it differently and had a better outcome. The kings probably need to 4-bet that pre. On one hand, it's like amazing when this guy has king 4 suited versus us and we have kings. On the other hand, we could like 4-bet small and try and get him to commit more chips because he's already put in fucking $45 for no reason. So not super thrilled about the results tonight. Not especially enthused about this, but we ride. It's another session and back to the lab to play slightly less bad and lose slightly less money next session. Modest goals, people. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Take care. See you next time.